So 2025 is only 9 months in, but already it's clear that the main thing people will be talking about WWE for in the year will have been John Cena's heel turn. The heel turn that took place at the Elimination Chamber and lasted through to SummerSlam when John Cena dropped the title to Cody Rhodes. And the two shook hands afterwards, confirming Cena's return to the babyface side of the aisle. Now that the John Cena run that wrestling fans have been waiting for a very long time has run its course, I think it's fair for us to make the conclusion that it's been far from ideal. And that's not to say that some wrestling fans haven't enjoyed it. Of course they have. They were always going to. They've been waiting to see John Cena play the heel character for an awful long time, and for many, just experiencing that was enough, regardless of how they did it. But in my view, the execution at very key moments and some of the details have been severely lacking in providing a satisfying story to accompany the heel turn in itself. So what I'm going to do with this video is try to rebook that period, including the Cena heel turn itself and the end of the story, and perhaps even look at what's going to come next for some of the key players in the story I've written. But what I will say is that my story isn't massively different. I haven't changed some of the big set pieces, I haven't messed around with most of WWE's plans, I've just filled in the blanks in a few places and added a little bit of detail here and there, plus added an additional subplot that I think will allow the story to have a lasting legacy going into 2026. Before I tell the story of how I would rebook this run, I want to go back quickly and just reflect on the real life run that we got and pick out the reasons why I think it was less than perfect and where it failed, in my opinion, to generate the interest that I was hoping that I would get from such a run. So as I've already kind of alluded to, I don't have issues with any of the really big moments. I don't really have any issue with the outline, like the idea of Cena turning heel at Elimination Chamber, going to WrestleMania, winning the world title for the 17th time, holding the belt through the spring and into the summer, and then dropping the belt back to Cody Rhodes at SummerSlam before turning babyface again. None of that, in essence, is a problem for me. I don't have any issue with that. The major problem I have is how they've presented that and how they have explained a lot of that stuff. So I'm going to list off 5 things that I think were the reasons that this heel turn has been less than great. The first one is the pitiful justification they had for Cena actually turning heel. If you cast your mind back to Cena's first promo after the Elimination Chamber, his whole thing centered around the treatment that he has faced at the hands of the fans. Now, of course, that's understandable in some ways because obviously the fans have booed him through most of his career, or some of the fans anyway, a proportion of the fans, and depending on the type of crowd, that proportion would either be higher or lower. But in truth, this is a situation that Cena has lived with for that entire babyface main event run that's lasted 20 years. So why suddenly it would now be a problem enough for him to change his whole outlook on life? Because regardless of the fans, the central tenet of the John Cena character is hustle, loyalty and respect, and he lives by that mantra. He's always lived by that code of honor. And so for him to suddenly just throw that away because after 20 years of being booed by the fans just doesn't amount to a good justification for him to suddenly turn heel and do all these horrible things. So we needed something greater, or we needed something more exceptional for John Cena to do this. And there's a way for me to explain this in a better way than just go suddenly, oh, the fans have always booed me, so I'm now going to be a heel. Like, that just doesn't ring true. It doesn't make sense. It's not a good character progression. It's not a good story logic. It's just really, really poor in my view. So the second reason I have a problem with the heel run is the lack of explanation for his association with The Rock. So obviously when he turned heel, it was at the Elimination Chamber, and it was after Cody had told The Rock that he didn't want to sell his soul. He rejected The Rock's offer, and then John Cena attacked him seemingly at the behest of The Rock. Obviously you remember The Rock ran his thumb across his own throat to sort of say to Cena, right now, beat him up. Why Cena was working with The Rock, what agreement they had, what deal they had in place, Why this happened is not clear at all. It's never been explained. It's been left up for us to just fill in the gaps. The commentators haven't speculated on why that's happened. Other wrestlers haven't speculated. We haven't had Cody, for example, come out and talk about why he thinks that happened, and Cena himself hasn't explained it. We've had no reason to understand what that association was, and when you consider the other steps in the story as we've gone along, that association hasn't made any sense, because it's not as if The Rock, for example, helped John Cena win in the main event of WrestleMania. It's not as if The Rock and John Cena have worked together again after that point. It has been completely lost, and I absolutely do not believe we'll ever get any explanation for it. This was a case of the WWE wanting to shock us, wanting to use big names to shock us, but having no storyline reason for any of it to happen. And I think it was really, really poor for that reason. Thirdly, there was no reason for John Cena to attack Cody at the Elimination Chamber. So let's say, for example, that we ignore the John Cena and Rock association, because we've had no explanation for it anyway. So let's pretend that they had no association, that John Cena's attack on Cody was nothing to do with The Rock. He just attacked Cody. Why he would do that makes no sense in the context of his heel turn. Sure, John Cena might be angry with the fans for booing him at times during his career, which I've already explained I think is a flimsy excuse. But if that really is the reason why he's turning heel, why is he attacking Cody Rhodes? Now, you could explain that away with Cody Rhodes being the latest wrestler ordained by the fans to be the top babyface, to be the replacement ultimately for John Cena, but that's a really flimsy story, one that's been told a million times before. It doesn't ring true. Again, it's not enough of an exceptional reason for John Cena to completely forget the code of honor that he has worked to and lived by for 20 years. It just doesn't fit what the character is about. And so again, they failed to explain why John Cena would attack Cody. Even if he was angry with the fans, that's a separate thing to him attacking Cody. Fourthly, and perhaps the most egregious thing, was Travis Scott's involvement in the main event of WrestleMania. You could argue Travis Scott's involvement at all during this whole thing. Obviously, there was controversy at the time of the Elimination Chamber itself. The bigger crime, in my opinion, was his involvement in the main event of WrestleMania. It was not befitting the main event of WrestleMania, and it certainly wasn't befitting the moment where John Cena broke the record and won his 17th World Championship. So we've got to address that in my story. And then the final one, which is a little bit later, and you'll notice most of that stuff is the setup to the story that I've got a problem with, the setup to the heel turn and the explanation for the heel turn. That's the main bulk of the stuff I have a problem with. But then the fifth thing is that there was very, very little in the way of a character journey that led him back to being a babyface. So what effectively happened in the story is that John Cena turns heel at the Elimination Chamber, says some awful things to the fans, uses underhanded tactics to beat Cody Rhodes, attacks R-Truth, continues to use underhanded tactics to win matches, and then he has one promo with Cody the week before SummerSlam, turns babyface in the process, then goes into SummerSlam as a completely clean match with Cody, and then we're just expected to accept Cena back as a babyface. There's been no sense that the character's been through something to get him back to this point. And so for me, this particular point really emphasizes the biggest problem I have with the Cena heel run. And that is that the characterization behind it, that ran underneath it, that basically was the reason why it happened, just wasn't there. We didn't get to explore Cena as a character, we just got to explore Cena as a heel wrestler. And those are two different things. We could have had both. There's absolutely no reason why we couldn't have both. And I'm going to talk you through how I felt WWE could have had both now. So I'm going to start where WWE started with this story, and that is on the 28th of February SmackDown, where The Rock confronted Cody Rhodes and offered Cody a deal, which was effectively that Rock wanted Cody's soul, and in return The Rock would give Cody everything. He'd give him the keys to the celebrity lifestyle and mainstream success that The Rock himself had experienced over the last 20 years. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't particularly like this angle very much. I just felt that the whole idea of The Rock asking for Cody's soul was ultimately a bit silly and really just a bit vague. Even if we consider this to be metaphorical or literal, either way, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I'm not really sure what they were getting at, whatever. But given that it, for me, doesn't fundamentally change anything else that I'm really interested in, I'm going to just leave this exactly as it was. So what happens on that SmackDown is exactly what took place. Cody is offered this deal by The Rock and is expecting an answer from him at Elimination Chamber. Then we get to the Elimination Chamber, and this is where things start to change for me. And the first change, and perhaps quite a fundamental change, is the result of the Chamber match. So what's going to happen? Instead of Cena winning and beating Punk, Punk is going to end up beating Cena. What we're going to do is we're going to do exactly what happened in the match up to the point where Cena locks in the STF. So Rollins is going to do his curb stomp on Punk. Then Cena's going to get him in the STF. But this time, Punk's going to escape from it. They then have a bit more of the match. Punk eventually wins with the go to sleep. After the match, Cena's down and he's hurt and he's on the outside of the ring. Meanwhile, Cody comes out and talks to Punk. So very similar to what they did with Cody and Cena at the end of the match. This time, Cody comes out to talk to Punk. They talk to each other. Ultimately, they shake hands and agree that in the main event of WrestleMania, the best man will win. And so the main event of WrestleMania, as far as we know at this point, is going to be Cody Rhodes versus CM Punk. Punk then leaves, and out comes The Rock to get his answer to the question he posed to Cody on SmackDown. And from here, we do the rest of the angle as it happened in real life. So again, I'm not changing anything. I'm not getting rid of the amazing surprise of Cena's heel turn. So from that perspective, nothing changes. Now, I guess, take out Travis Scott from this particular angle, and I know a lot of people would probably want him to not be there, especially given what he would go on to do. Ultimately, I don't really care. I'm quite happy for Travis Scott to be there if it meant that there was a bit more interest from a mainstream perspective, because Travis Scott was in the ring with The Rock and John Cena and also got involved physically in helping Cena and The Rock beat up Rhodes. Then I don't really have a huge amount of problem with it. So from this point onwards, that angle happens exactly as it did. Now, between the Elimination Chamber and the Monday Night Raw that came from Belgium on the 17th of March, Cody Rhodes cuts a couple of promos. He does do a little bit of speculation about what Cena's up to. He talks about the fact that Cena doesn't seem to like the fact that Cody's replaced him and all of that stuff, which I find, as I say, quite weak. But anyway, that's what Cody does. Those can stay the same as well. But what's going to change next is what Cena says on the Raw from Belgium on the 17th of March. And this is where I really want to start to emphasize the character changes that are going on with Cena at this point and the reasons why he's doing the things he's doing. So ultimately, Cena comes out in Belgium and says he's sorry. He says that for 20 years he has lived by a simple code: hustle, loyalty and respect. And that for the first time at Elimination Chamber, he put that code aside. He says and explains that he was desperate to make the WrestleMania main event, the main event of WrestleMania that would be, without question, his very last one, as this is his last in-ring year. He says he tried to make that happen by winning the Royal Rumble, but was beaten by Jey Uso. He then immediately, after that match, announced himself for the Elimination Chamber because he knew that that was going to be his last chance to make the main event. His last chance until he saw The Rock offer Cody Rhodes the deal that he saw him offer on SmackDown before Elimination Chamber. Cena then says that on the Saturday morning before Elimination Chamber, he contacted The Rock and told him that if he didn't win the Chamber match, and if Cody turned down The Rock's offer, he'd show Cody why he should have done, and in return, Cena would be inserted into the Mania main event. And he then announces that he has been inserted into the main event, so at WrestleMania it will be Cody Rhodes versus CM Punk versus John Cena. He says that when Punk beat him, he knew he had to break his own code because it was the only way for him to get into the main event of WrestleMania. He tells the fans that he's hoping that on this one occasion, after a career of following his code, that for this one time they will forgive him, and asks for the crowd to take a week to think on it, to think about what he said, and then on Raw next week give him his answer. The following week, Raw is in Glasgow on the 24th of March, and Cena once again was in attendance. He enters and the crowd boo him. Now, this is the thing, there's a possibility that the majority of the fans are cheering for Cena at this point, and that's fine. I think it doesn't matter what proportion of the audience are booing him, we still can basically do the same thing as I'm about to do, which is that after Cena's entered and he's booed, the commentators can emphasize those that are booing him, say that there's some smattering of cheers, but there's still a lot of people that are acting very, very negatively towards Cena as a consequence of what he did at at Elimination Chamber, and then Cena can round on the fans and tell them that after all this time where he has always done the right thing, that if they won't forgive one lapse in his spotless record, then they can go to hell. Then he can talk about the abusive relationship if he wants to, which was the main kind of talking or the main explanation point really for why Cena turned heel in real life. So we can still include that real life, what happened in real life, but we're going to add some elements, which is effectively that 1 week Cena comes out and asks for forgiveness for this one lapse in him no longer living up to hustle, loyalty and respect. Then the following week the fans still booing him and him saying, okay, well, to hell with you then. If you will not accept my apology on this one occasion when I've done wrong, then to hell with you. Now, the purpose of these two promos for me is to cover off the first three problems that we discussed at the beginning of this video, which is that, first of all, we've got John Cena now has a reason to turn on the fans because they wouldn't accept his apology that he made for the one time he didn't live up to hustle, loyalty and respect. So Cena, now angered by their lack of willingness to accept his apology, rounds on the fans and starts saying stuff about the fans and talks about the abusive relationship. This stuff that maybe he's been keeping inside for a very long time but has suddenly boiled to the surface. We've also given him an exceptional reason for why he's willing to do this, because he is desperate. He knows that this is his last Mania, and if he doesn't win the Elimination Chamber, then he can't be in that main event of WrestleMania. So he needs a way into the main event of WrestleMania that isn't perhaps living up to hustle, loyalty and respect. And that's why the association with The Rock. The whole point is that Cena made a deal with The Rock to do that. It's not like they're aligned, it's not like they're in an alliance or anything, but just on this one occasion, Cena made a deal with The Rock to make sure they could get into WrestleMania. So we've explained why Cena's turned on the fans, we've explained what the association with The Rock was, and then also we've explained why he attacked Cody, is that was the deal. The deal was that he had to beat up Cody in order to get his main event slot. So we've covered off the three, for me, the biggest gaps in Cena's explanation after this point. Now, I would accept the criticism that I'm spoon-feeding a little more the story to the fans and to the audience, but my reasons for doing this are not just because I want the explanations to be clear to people, but also I don't want to set an expectation that The Rock will be at WrestleMania. And that is, I think, the main problem with them never explaining the association between The Rock and John Cena, is that then led to everyone believing that The Rock would be at WrestleMania to help John Cena again. So in this way, what we've done is we've covered off that. We're saying that John Cena and The Rock are not in an alliance of any kind. It's just that this was the deal John Cena had to do to get himself into the main event of WrestleMania. Now, another thing I'm going to do later is talk about why The Rock would make that deal, but we'll get there in a little bit. So now, between the Glasgow episode of Raw on the 24th of March and WrestleMania itself, very little need change. Maybe we have a few promos where each of Punk, Cody and Cena confront one another, or even have just solo promos where they talk about the main event and hype up what they want to get out of it and all the rest of it. But there's nothing too notable here. We've done all the groundwork. Now we're just getting ready for that main event. This is where the next level of changes take place. So we're going to WrestleMania, but before I talk about what I would do at WrestleMania, I do want to make clear how I would have shifted the card around just a little bit to accommodate the addition of CM Punk into the main event, and it's quite simple. We just have a match between Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. For anybody who's watched the WWE Unreal documentary on Netflix, there was certainly a point in time where the plan was to have Seth versus Roman at WrestleMania, and I think it makes perfect sense. You can also do a lot more groundwork on that feud in terms of leading it on from what took place at WrestleMania 40, and Roman talking about the fact that Seth was the one who cost him his title at WrestleMania 40. What's more is you can still do the Heyman turn on Roman Reigns at that point if you want, so that needn't change either, but I just would make that a singles match and then them two go off onto their feud. That would then allow Punk to be part of this main event. So on we go to the main event of WrestleMania 41, and the first thing I want to make clear is that there will be no Travis Scott involvement. He is not here, he is not a part of this. He's got nothing further to do with this story or what's going on in this run. What happens here is that all three men are pretty tired, but we're getting near the end of the match. And at this point, somebody comes out. Now, who that somebody is up to you, to be honest. I don't really mind who it is. For the purposes of this story, and the story I'm telling, just to make it easier to tell the story, I have chosen LA Knight. But you could choose pretty much anybody else you want. I've also suggested maybe AJ Styles, maybe Randy Orton, maybe somebody else, but ultimately I've gone with LA Knight. And what LA Knight is going to do is he's going to come out, he's going to attack Cody, and then in the ring, John Cena is going to defeat CM Punk cleanly. Now, I feel like this is fine in terms of some people might argue that Cena shouldn't beat Punk clean. The thing I want to emphasize at this point, that everything John Cena does from this point onwards is going to be as if he was a babyface. The only reason you're going to think of him as a heel is because of what he'd already done to Cody and because of what he'd said to the fans. He's going to continue to be antagonistic towards his opponents, of course, but he's not going to be a backfighter. He's not going to attack people when they're not expecting it, and he's not going to cheat to win. He's going to do all the same stuff that he used to do. The only difference is that he's doing it from the perspective of having done what he did to Cody and saying what he said to the fans. Punk would be fine with this too. Punk ultimately would be in his main event of WrestleMania that he's been waiting for his entire career. He would get that main event, and we'd still get the moment backstage where Punk realized he did it and kind of got all emotional. We also would be in a place where Punk had beaten John Cena at Elimination Chamber cleanly in their confrontation, and then he paid back the favor here in the main event of WrestleMania by losing to Cena. So Cena becomes the world champion, but obviously doesn't beat the man who held the belt before. Cody Rhodes is not part of the finish. Cena pins Punk to become the world champion. That will later play into why Cody can get his rematch at SummerSlam. In the meantime, John Cena celebrates at the end of WrestleMania as champion and as a heel. That's the position we have coming out of WrestleMania. Okay, so now we're going to look at what happens after WrestleMania, and we're going to start with Cody and what takes place for him straight away, because as in real life, Cody is going to take a little break. So we know that in real life, Cody took a short break after WrestleMania. I think it was a well-earned break. He'd been working extremely hard for the previous couple of years. He took a break, and that's what's going to happen here in real life. In the meantime, LA Knight is going to offer no explanation for why he attacked Cody at WrestleMania. And then when Cody comes back, he's going to go straight after LA Knight and demand a justification, an explanation for what he did. But LA Knight is going to stay resolute. He's not going to give an explanation. But unlike where we've had no explanation in real life for a lot of things that have taken place, the commentators are not going to stop talking about it. They're going to continually speculate about why LA Knight would attack Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. So before I go any further, I need to explain some backstory for LA Knight, because going into WrestleMania, he's effectively going to not secure a place on the WrestleMania card. His whole story in the build to WrestleMania is that he loses the US title and then can't get himself back on the WrestleMania card. Maybe has a match to get to be the number one contender to the title, loses it because of interference or because of underhanded tactics or whatever. But LA Knight basically doesn't earn a place on the WrestleMania card, and this is going to irk LA Knight, and so the commentators are going to speculate that that's the reason he got involved, because he is jealous or he's angry that he wasn't involved in WrestleMania. And again, you can do this with whoever you want. So if it was Orton, the same story applies. Orton doesn't have a match at WrestleMania, and so he's angry and whatever else. And so this is one of the things that the commentators speculate could be the reason why LA Knight did what he did. But there are also other reasons that they talk about, they speculate, and one of them is that The Rock did a deal with LA Knight. So we now know that The Rock did a deal with John Cena at the Elimination Chamber. So maybe The Rock did another deal, this time with LA Knight, to attack Cody. But whatever the case, LA Knight is not going to explain. He refuses to explain. At a certain point between WrestleMania and SummerSlam, Cody and LA Knight have their match, and Cody comes out the victor, and basically in doing so starts to return his focus back to getting the WWE title back after Cena obviously held it after beating him at WrestleMania. In the meantime, Cena during this period is going to do effectively what he did between WrestleMania and SummerSlam in real life. So what we know is that he had a match with Randy Orton, a match with R-Truth, a match with CM Punk. Those matches can still happen. Ultimately, my idea would be that after WrestleMania, CM Punk comes out to challenge John Cena, and instead of them two fighting at Saudi Arabia, the two of them fight at the next available pay-per-view, with CM Punk saying, look, in the Elimination Chamber I beat you, in a triple threat match at WrestleMania you beat me, let's go one-on-one one last time and find out who the best is. But John Cena can win it, and he can win it clean. He can also face Randy Orton, which is another match they wanted to do and did do. They can do that a bit later, so I'm shuffling around the order of these matches a bit, but that's fine. He doesn't necessarily have to have a match with R-Truth, he could have a match with somebody else, but ultimately he has 2 or 3 matches between WrestleMania and SummerSlam, and they're largely with the same people. So the thing I'm going to change about this period, though, is that Cena is not doing things that mark him out as a heel. He's not going to cheat to win. He's not going to attack R-Truth, as we said. And so, for example, in a match with CM Punk, maybe Cena goes to get a chair and looks like he wants to hit CM Punk with it to try and get an advantage, but in the end chooses against doing it. And throughout this period, it's like he's trying to commit to being something that he's not. But in his heart, really, he wants to continue to live his life by his code that he's always had, and he wants the adulation of the crowd. But obviously he can't have it, so he keeps trying to lean into being the bad guy, but just for whatever reason is reluctant to or cannot do it. So that's kind of the idea we're giving with everything that we do with Cena during this period. Then we have, as I say, Cody focus back on John Cena to get his WWE title again. And Cody cuts a promo a few weeks before SummerSlam where he says that Cena doesn't want this. He says that Cena doesn't want to be the guy getting booed while he prepares for retirement. He says that Cena only criticized the fans when he saw red after they didn't accept his apology. He expected them to accept his apology just like that, and they didn't. And he says that he knows that Cena's reflected on that stuff from all those months ago and realized that the fans were in fact right not to accept Cena's apology. Cena himself doesn't feel good about what he did to Cody at the Elimination Chamber. He says he knows Cena wants the chance to put it right, and he says that Cena will not be satisfied with this record-breaking title reign if he doesn't defend the belt against the guy who never really lost it in the first place. He says that Cena can show that he still lives by those principles, the hustle, loyalty and respect, by defending the title against him at SummerSlam. And in response, Cena can maybe come out a week later or on SmackDown or whenever, and he can come to the ring solemnly and literally just say one thing, which is, Cody, you're on. And that is it. He doesn't do anything else. That's it. It's just a resigned to the fact that Cody was right, but he's not going to say it at this point. And so the intrigue going into SummerSlam is, what is the truth? Is Cena really the guy that wants to live his life by hustle, loyalty and respect? Or is he now somebody different who wants to kind of belittle the fans and who is willing to go to any depths to achieve the things he wants to achieve? Now, the answer to that is exactly what they did at SummerSlam, which is that Cena and Rhodes will play out a completely clean match. Cody Rhodes will win it, and at the end, Cena will shake his hands and confirm his return as a babyface. But unlike in real life, we have been leading to this moment for the entirety of his heel run. In fact, what we're in fact saying is that Cena was always a good guy. He made one miscalculation based on desperation to get to the main event of WrestleMania. And had he not done that, a heel turn would never have happened. The heel run would never have taken place. It is all only a very subtle difference from what really happened. My story is only very slightly different, but those differences really make the difference between this, for me, being satisfying on an emotional and story level, as well as giving us the opportunity to see Cena as a heel. But as I said earlier, there is a legacy as well now to this story because of the LA Knight thread. So I think I always like in storylines for them to leave breadcrumbs for future stuff. And in this story, the breadcrumb I've left obviously is the LA Knight attack on Cody. Why did he do it? Now, we've resolved sort of the feud between LA Knight and Cody because Cody's beaten him in a singles match. But we're going to reveal why LA Knight attacked Cody on the first episode of Raw or SmackDown in 2026. And what's going to happen is that whether The Rock is available or not to appear, it's going to be announced that LA Knight has been given by The Rock a Money in the Bank briefcase, a special Money in the Bank briefcase personally endorsed by The Rock and signed by The Rock being the final boss, the guy who's on the board who can pretty much do what he wants now. He has given LA Knight this Money in the Bank briefcase, and he will have to use it between that point and the end of WrestleMania 42. And what we can do is we don't have to have LA Knight say, this is my reward for attacking Cody. We can just have the commentators speculate and basically make the assumption, the correct assumption, that The Rock gave LA Knight the Money in the Bank briefcase. And you can tie it in with the idea that LA Knight not being booked at WrestleMania 41 left him open to persuasion by The Rock to cut this deal in the first place. that LA Knight was angry, he was bitter, he wasn't in the WrestleMania card, and The Rock took advantage of it, offered him a deal which would mean almost that he would be guaranteed a place on the WrestleMania 42 card, because he now had this Money in the Bank briefcase that he could either cash in before WrestleMania and get a title to go into WrestleMania with, or even cash in at WrestleMania. Now, there are loads of different ways you could go with that. He could cash in on the World Heavyweight Champion, he could cash on the WWE Champion, he could do it before WrestleMania, he could do it at WrestleMania, whatever, it doesn't really matter. You've got any number of options you want to go with LA Knight going into WrestleMania 42. In the meantime, though, I am also interested in The Rock's motivation. Now, at some point, I'm hoping that The Rock will have one more match, and in my personal view, the most intriguing match that he can have is not with Roman Reigns, but with Cody. Now, he may never have another match, in which case we can never have Cody versus The Rock, and we can never fully pay this off with a match, but we can still have The Rock at some point explain that the reason he did this is that his plan back at WrestleMania 40 was to retire. He wanted to go out, he wanted one last match, and that to be against his family member Roman Reigns. They would have a match over the WWE title, and then win, lose or draw, he would be able to hold his head up high and retire from in-ring competition. But by demanding his rightful place in the main event of WrestleMania 40, Cody undid The Rock's plans. And then even after that, even when The Rock had found an alternative plan to retire by pinning Cody in the main event of WrestleMania 40 Night 1, Cody then defeated Roman Reigns for the title the following night and scuppered all of The Rock's hopes of having a happy ending at the end of his career. And so, with these plans having been destroyed by Cody, The Rock decided that he was going to destroy Cody's life. In the first instance, it was when Cena offered him the opportunity to attack Cody at Elimination Chamber, which he took. So The Rock himself could even say that I was going to attack Cody if Cody didn't accept my deal, but the fact that then Cena offered to do it for me was perfect. I was more than happy for somebody else to get their hands dirty. Then at WrestleMania, he can say that he did the deal with LA Knight to ensure Cody was no longer champion. He didn't care if Cena won, he didn't care if CM Punk won, he just didn't want Cody to be the champion anymore. And so he felt like the perfect place for Cody to be screwed out of the title was at the 1 year anniversary of his beating Roman Reigns for the title in the first place, and that was his motivation for giving LA Knight this deal. As I said, you can either go from there to a match, hopefully, between Cody and The Rock at WrestleMania 42, or if The Rock is not available, then who knows, you can continue this story onwards. Maybe The Rock then employs or does a deal with somebody else to be Cody's opponent at WrestleMania 42, maybe a Joshua Fatu or a Bron Breakker or somebody, who's physically imposing and who will give Cody a real run for their money. Whatever the case, you can continue on a story between The Rock and Cody, and I feel like they've kind of undercut that by some of the things that they've done in the last year. I'm reviving that. I still think that there's some intrigue and interest around that. So you could have that match at WrestleMania 42, but it could also potentially not happen because The Rock might not be available, in which case you can just keep it going until a point where you can resolve it in the future. And you have this kind of nugget of LA Knight having this extra Money in the Bank briefcase on the road to WrestleMania with hundreds of different options that you could choose to go down with that. And that is the Cena heel turn rebooked. We've addressed the issues we had at the start of this video. In addition to the three that I've already talked about, we obviously have now addressed Travis Scott being anything to do with the main event of WrestleMania. That's no longer the case. And we've also ensured that there's a journey that the character's gone on and a reason for him turning against the fans that is true to his character and could be explained by the exceptional circumstance of him having the desperation to get into the main event of WrestleMania. Without all of those things, for me, it just doesn't hold together very well in a satisfying, emotional way. I think what we've done here is change that. What we've also done is ensure there's some things coming out of it that will be of interest going forward, with The Rock and Cody potentially, and with LA Knight and his journey on to WrestleMania 42. And in the midst of all of this, we've really barely changed the story in terms of the high level story at all. John Cena still turned heel at Elimination Chamber. We still had that major surprise. John Cena still won the world title at WrestleMania and broke the record to become a 17-time world champion. He still went back to being a babyface in time for SummerSlam, and at SummerSlam Cody still won the world championship back. All those things stay the same. All we've done is add CM Punk to their match at WrestleMania, which I think would have made for a better WrestleMania main event anyway, and included the LA Knight subplot as a means really more than anything to have another thing to lead on from this story into the future. If you've managed to get all the way to this point with me on this video, thank you very much. Please consider subscribing and give us a like, certainly if you've enjoyed it. And of course, depending on the success of this video, there may be more videos that are similar to it. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.